Hello, and today we're going to look at some sources of gender identity, which is for the Year 12 homework. This is based on student work which was done on Monday the 10th of November 2008. So first source of gender identity is family, and students have said family is a place where children learn about their gender. Children imitate their parents, identify with their behaviour and internalise what they hear and see. They also learn how to see if they are similar or different to others in concern of their gender. There's a wide variety of ways in which primary socialisation, the family, produces gender identity, and the guys have identified two examples. First example is clothes and toys, so dresses for girls, trousers for boys, Barbies for girls, action men for boys, also colour schemes. Pink for girls and normally baby blue for boys. Another area is language, so the language used by parents to their children. Little girl, big boy, who's a brave soldier, that kind of stuff, and it helps them to distinguish their gender. A lot of the work on gender socialisation in family was done by Annie Oakley, who's a feminist thinker. If you turn to page 98 in the 7th edition of Harold Lambos, you'll find a lot of information on her theory and other feminist theories. Right, second area which the guys were looking at in terms of how gender identity is produced, the workplace. And there's a variety of issues here. The workplace has changed a great deal recently, and that means that its effect on gender has changed. So, for example, they've said there's been a change from manufacturing to service industry, so physical strength has become a lot less important over time. New technology has brought with it a need for new skills, and the global economy has changed the demand for goods and services. This means that there'll be many more opportunities for women. Physical strength, which men are naturally better at, has become less important, and the skills which women are able to go and succeed in are more valuable nowadays, and that means women are becoming a lot more economically independent and powerful. Further, part-time, temporary and casual jobs in the labour market has risen. Mackingale, that's one person, a Scottish sociologist, argues that the working class man has experienced what's called a crisis of masculinity. So that traditional, quite macho, physical, manual job is gone. Nothing's really replaced it for these type of men, so that's having a big effect on their identity. Frosch and Dow argue that the hopes and aspirations of white working class school leavers, which they studied in Cambridge and Sheffield, are out of sync with the types of jobs which are now available. So their masculinity, their macho kind of hegemonic traditional masculinity, is setting them up really badly for the world of work. So it's very concerning to teachers, and has negative consequences for them. Third, one of the more interesting areas in which people develop gender identity is through their peers. That's their friends and people who are a similar age and kind of position to them. And we've got various theories about this. Okay, McDonald and Marsh found peer groups were important to disengage young males. So disengaged young males means people involved with crime, people who are dropouts, who aren't academically successful, or part of anti-school subcultures. So McDonald and Marsh found that these disengaged boys found a lot of strength in those, and they kind of reinforced their identity. Lee said males are able to control females through their derogatory language. Derogatory means negative, so this is swearing at people, using kind of sexual terms to undermine women. Frosch et al. Found that boys identify characteristics to aspire to, such as being fashionable and being hard. This is about masculine values. General point to make about peer groups is as you become older, you find the approval of your peers more important. And we receive independence from our parents, and peer group takes over from primary socialisation. Birdsey, 2004, studied footballers, and especially young Asian footballers, and they would change their behaviour to become one of the lads, and they'd reject their traditional Muslim or Hindu kind of background, norms and values to fit in. So their peer group is very important in developing and integrating them into a non-Asian culture. Also looking at ethnicity, Archer argues that Muslim boys undermine the dominant form of masculinity for racialised masculinity. So, I mean, they're unusual. They don't want to go and, you know, be part of the gang. So Archer and Birdsey are disagreeing about Muslim Asian males. Education, this is done by Phil Ashton. Variety of different things. Education is an important agent in socialisation since most children spend many hours and years in it, so it's something which applies to us all. Jackson, 2006, found the distinction between masculinities and femininities amongst younger people still existed, but girls would often take on laddish behaviour. So there was, you know, there still were gender kind of differences, but they were blurring, and you were getting quite laddish or ladette girls. Mack and Gale found male teachers encourage masculine behaviour in boys. So this is kind of, you know, sexist comments, homophobia, and so on. I think it's probably more common in lessons where you've got a majority of boys, so perhaps PE. It's hard to say really. Frosch et al. Found that boys valued academic success, were committed to school, were seen as feminine. So they found that boys used a lot of strategies to disguise that they were working, and they were trying to pretend that they weren't working hard when they actually were. And so to avoid being labelled as feminine and try hard, they, you know, tried to pretend they weren't doing any work, whereas of course they were. Cayley et al. Found in primary schools the sex-gender relationships were articulated via friendship groups. So this is the combination of a peer group and the education system. Reynolds looked at 10 and 11-year-old boys, and she interviewed them, and they found that there was a minority who had, you know, extreme sexism and homophobia, and they called this being hyper-heterosexual. They found that these boys were actually quite unusual, and there was, you know, normally kind of family influence there. So, you know, perhaps dad was, you know, providing a kind of homophobic or sexist role model to them. Lastly, a general point, the formal curriculum subjects are taught in the classroom. The hidden curriculum is all around us, but not kind of obviously identified. There's a difference between the subjects that girls and boys take, and that's become less pronounced, but it's still evident. So, you know, if you look at A-level physics, you'll find many, many more boys than girls. This has consequences for their later lives, of course. Also, there are many, many aspects of the hidden curriculum which affect gender identities, uniform, for example. Lastly, but certainly not least, we've got the mass media. Mass media is things like TV, cinema, magazines, newspapers, and so on. Gill and Herdikoff suggested that the mass media persuades young women that the body is a key source of their identity. Example of this is High School Musical, where women are given feisty roles and you know, lots of personality, yet they have to wear piles of makeup and are incredibly thin and attractive. So you're allowed a personality if you're thin and attractive, otherwise you're stereotyped based on, you know, your lack of beauty. Story in 2003 claims that Elvis Presley's music reinforced aggressive masculinity, and rock and roll and later, you know, hip hop has reinforced that aggressive macho masculinity. Gender stereotypes present in TV, such as the male superhero and the sexy female, this has become less apparent over time, and you do find female strong characters who are, you know, for want of a better word, macho, such as Buffy the Vampire Slayer. They do tend also to be quite attractive and young and thin, and so to a certain extent they're trying to go and, you know, get the female audience and the male audience by, you know, having a positive male, positive female image, but somebody who's, you know, also very pleasing for the men to look at. Gauntlet in 2002 argues that magazines, music, books and television provide opportunities for young people to learn how they should dress, and celebrities provide role models for children. Okay, so we've got a variety of different areas which illustrate how gender identities are introduced in a variety of different theories, and I hope this will be useful for you when you're doing your essay.